So, every morning I go through a pretty big media scan to see what's happening across the country, to make sure that I'm focusing my day and my efforts appropriately. And um, one story that I came across that I wanted to bring to your attention today is it's a story in the National Post, and it says, "Don't expect fiscal update anytime soon," says Trudeau, as quote, "any prediction will be highly unreliable." Okay, I want to unpack for you what this means and why it's unprecedented and why it's so bad and what we're, as the Conservative Party, doing about it. So, as you know, Justin Trudeau and the New Democratic Party voted to essentially shutter Parliament. Parliament has been suspended for months. My party, we did try to attempt to get full functionality of Parliament back. Why? Well, because we're a democracy, and your voices should be heard in the House of Commons, especially during a time when the Canadian economy, public health, like we're going through some pretty serious events here. But nonetheless, Justin Trudeau and the NDP voted to extend the shuttering of Parliament until September. So that means, as an opposition member, I can't table motions, I can't, in the House of Commons, I can't, order documents, all of the sort of things that I would be looking at to hold the government to account. But the other thing that hasn't happened this year is that Justin Trudeau hasn't tabled a federal budget. Now, what is a federal budget? Simply put, it's the plan on how much money the government is going to spend and where they're getting that money from, right? So this is important. I would think everybody watching this video, you've at some point in your life put a budget together, right? It's how much money am I making? How much money am I spending? What do I need to save for? How am I allocating expenses? And then you spend accordingly to that. Now, this is kind of important for the government because as your elected representatives, I have to vote on whether or not I think that we should be taxing you or spending that money in that certain way. But he hasn't tabled a budget this year, so he's just spending money without any sort of oversight, really. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Now, the problem that that has been exacerbated is there's another document that the government can choose to table called the fiscal update. And without going into technical detail, it's kind of like a mini budget. It's saying, like, okay, we've had there's been a big change in the situation. Here's how much money we're spending that as compared to like the last federal budget. Here's where we're going. And we've been expecting and pushing the government to table a fiscal update because they've been spending like unprecedented rates of money. Like, to put it in perspective, I think that in the 5 years that Justin Trudeau has been in office, or close to 5 years, he has, I think, like nearly doubled, if not more, or is on track to double the entire federal debt that was ever accrued in the history of our country. I don't know because I can't see these numbers because he's not tabling it, but this is what reports are saying. So why is it so important for us to get this fiscal update? Well, you need to know how much more tax you're going to have to pay for the CERB and all of these wages. Oh, and by the way, if you're collecting the CERB, or people that are collecting the CERB, that's going to have to get paid back somehow, because we're borrowing from people around the world to pay for that money. So that at some point in time, he is going to look to raise taxes. So we should be scrutinizing that at this point in time so that we and you know what that's going to look like. The second thing is that he's borrowing this money. Justin Trudeau don't have this money. Just Canada doesn't have this money. This is all deficit spending. This is putting money on the credit card. So what happens when you go to a lender, to the bank? Any of you who have gone to go get a loan, they look at your credit rating, right? Like, are you likely to pay back this money? And then they charge you interest rates accordingly. The issue with not tabling a fiscal update or a federal budget is that we don't have a plan for lenders to look at. Like, we don't have an economic forecast. So we could be getting into a situation here pretty quickly where we're borrowing billions and billions of dollars and adding to the federal debt, but we don't have a plan, and we could be paying higher levels of interest rates on that money that we're borrowing. And this is really important. Again, why? Because this all means that at some point in time, you're going to have to pay this back. I don't care who you are. If you've got somebody who votes super far left and is totally okay with everything that's happening, You have to tell them that they are going to have to pay this back at some point in time. Them, personally, every single one of us. So for this article, don't expect an update, a fiscal update anytime soon. That is crazy. So this is what he said in the article. A core part of predicting what things are going to look like for the rest of the year in coming years, he said it would require a crystal ball. In this situation, any prediction we make will be wildly unreliable from 1 week to the next. Why? Why would it be wildly unpredictable from 1 week to the next? We've got the data on, or we should have the data about how we've flattened the curve on COVID in Canada. The government has had 3 months of total lockdown to put in place measures around testing and ramping up hospital capacity. They should be getting data on when a therapeutic is available. That's all of this time for us sitting in lockdown should have been used by the government to predict exactly what he says we can't predict, which is what a second wave would look like, right? Like the fact that he says that he can't table a fiscal update means he has done nothing to address these issues, right? And I want to be in Parliament holding him to account on that, saying you don't get to say any prediction we make would be wild from 1 week to the next. He should be meeting with economic advisors, with industry groups, trying to predict what an economic recovery would look like or not look like, putting in place measures as the government to support and nurture that recovery over time while keeping people safe. That is what he should be doing. And the fact that he's saying he can't table this fiscal update, this budget, this plan, that means he's not doing his job. And I want you to understand something. The time that we have all spent in lockdown was time to buy the government time to do these sorts of things, right? We didn't cure COVID during this time period. All we did was we slowed down the spread enough. Why? What was the objective of that? To let the government prepare, right? That's what we were doing. Never mind the fact that there's all sorts of questions about how Justin Trudeau handled the front end of this, not closing down the borders, not recommending masks for months, believing the WHO when they said that there was no human-to-human transmission. This week the WHO said that asymptomatic transmission was very rare, and they had to walk that back 24 hours later. So there's all sorts of questions about that, but the fact that he cannot table a fiscal plan for this country means that he has done this much during this lockdown period in terms of planning for the Canadian economy. That statement, any prediction we make will be wildly unreliable from 1 week to the next. Well, whose fault is that? That is Justin Trudeau's fault. That is Justin Trudeau's fault. It should be predictable. They should have data. They should have a plan. Just saying like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I guess we're just going to have to see, and we're just going to have to spend and roll with it. Well, then why have a prime minister at all? Like, honestly, this is the equivalent of anarchy. Seriously. Like, what is he doing? Justin Trudeau needs to table a fiscal plan. So, what are we doing about it as the Conservative Party of Canada? My colleague Pierre Poilievre, if you go over to his Facebook page, he has been pushing diligently for one saving grace in the middle of all this craziness, and that is the Auditor General. So in the original motion around the suspension of Parliament, against all odds, we managed to, as the Conservative Party, get agreement that at least the Auditor General should be doing a deep dive audit of any spending that's happened while Parliament has been shuttered. The problem is that the Auditor General has been deeply underfunded by the Liberal government. So Pierre yesterday moved a motion in Finance Committee to ensure that the Auditor General was hiring and staffing to be able to do that deep dive of accountability, because we're hearing all sorts of rumor and conjecture about misappropriation of funds in different areas. I think that we need to make sure that anything that we're hearing is validated by fact. And Parliament, especially when we're not seeing things, we need to seeing the actual results, we need to make sure that the Auditor General is quantifying that, is looking at these facts, and has the resources to do so. We need more than like a couple of staff looking through hundreds of billions of dollars of deficit spending that haven't been scrutinized by Parliament. So Pierre has done a great job on that. And we're going to continue to push. I know that we've been pushing again, like saying anytime somebody's coming out and saying like, oh, well, we need to look at this, isn't it this issue, that issue, whatever, we're saying, well, wouldn't it be great if Parliament could actually sit with full functionality? So we are working on this, we're working hard, but when you are talking to people, please tell them that it is absolutely ridiculous, regardless of how they vote, that the Trudeau Liberals would say the following: they can't table a fiscal update because any prediction we make would be wildly unreliable from one week to the next. Whose fault is it? It's theirs. Share this video, talk to your friends, help us hold this government accountable. I gotta get back to work. Working hard for you. Have a great day.